Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra. I'm so happy that you're with me. And boy, I'm going to count on you guys today. It is a long haul now that we've been doing this live on Facebook and in the Zoom room. I hope that if you are with us, that you will have comments and sharing and questions. You can put them in the chat. You can put them in the chat on Facebook Live. You can put them in the chat in the Zoom room. And you can raise your hand because we are going to need all the help we can get today. We are moving into a brand new chapter in the Science of Mind, chapter 10, and this is the chapter on faith. And boy, don't we need to have a lot of faith right now. A lot of faith and a lot of breathing and a lot of continuing to hold our consciousness, to hold our spirits, to hold our intention, and to stay focused on the end result. So it seems particularly insightful, maybe a little challenging to talk about faith right now. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the idea of faith in the first place and what faith is. And so in the Science of Mind, in the beginning of this chapter, we're on page 155, prayer, faith, and belief are all defined as mental attitudes. Prayer, faith, and belief are closely related mental attitudes. And so when we think about a mental attitude of prayer, what might that be, right? A mental attitude of affirming good, affirming Spirit is present, affirming the outcome, affirming the end result, having a positive and cheerful affirmation around life. Belief, right? We know what belief is, a mental attitude that is basically constructed of our beliefs, the mental attitude that we have, the thought atmosphere, the way in which we are holding life in our minds and what we expect, what we think about it, from everything from a conscious thought to a deeply embedded subconscious thought. So faith is also a mental attitude. And so it's interesting to think about. You might ask yourself, what's your definition of faith? And what does it mean to have faith? And how does one cultivate faith? And what do we do with our faith when we're in a situation like a pandemic, a crisis, a personal challenge, financial issues, or just uncertainty about how we are going to continue to move forward? How do we bring some new creativity and new innovation to what we're doing? How do we move ourselves into a place of enjoying being home? The whole gamut, right? And faith as a mental attitude. So faith is a word that's used a lot in all spiritual traditions. We even call them faith traditions. So similarly, as we might say we have belief in something, we might say we have faith in something. We have faith in things, or we might say we have faith as a practice, as a way of engaging in life, as opposed to having faith in something and then saying, okay, it's up to you. What if faith were a mental attitude that was a way in which we walked around in the world? And what would that mental attitude be? So I'm going to invite you to think about that, and I'm going to invite you to chat and answer or raise your hand and share what your answer to the question, how do you define faith, or what is the mental attitude that is? And so when you're ready, you can raise your hand, you can chat it in. Ryan will bring you in. Love to hear from you. So go ahead, Ryan.
So shout out to BB. BB's here with us, and she says,
hi, BB.
Faith equals belief with conviction.
Faith equals belief with conviction. Okay, so it's an idea, a belief, a thought about how things work, and then the conviction that that is the way it is, that that is the truth. Good. Okay, Ryan?
All right, so I have Dr. Jane Gardner here with us. Dr. Jane, you want to go ahead and just unmute yourself?
Hi, Jane.
Yes.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Good to hear from you. I was going to say good to see you, but you can see me.
Well, I was just going to say I hope I'm not being seen, so I want to be heard, though. Okay?
Only heard.
Okay, well, here's what I first thought when you asked that, and I'd love to have your reaction to this, is what it looks like for me is being in the present moment and making decisions and being aware of what that faith is every moment of the day. I'm not saying I do that, but that's what I strive for.
To be in the present moment, to act from your faith, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right.
And so when you say act from your faith, what are you acting from?
What I know to be true about the divine. So I have some truths that are definitely, around CSL principles, and then they're more individualized to me, that I always move and act from. That,
yes.
That the divine is within me, unlimited, and I want to act as if I believe that.
Yes, good. Okay, I think you say something really important, right? Belief tends to be, I think, more static in that it is something, and faith is that movement. I'm acting as if what I believe is in fact true. Yes, beautiful. And of course, that's the whole point, that we want to build that we don't necessarily do that all the time, do we? Although we work on it. Good, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Right, so conviction, acting as if what we believe to be true is true. Do we have another one, Ryan?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention what Steve was saying. His definition of faith was, faith is just short of knowing. Hope, faith, knowing.
Yes. Great. That is a really interesting set of ideas, right? Hope is maybe not as convinced, maybe doesn't have as much conviction, and knowing has no question. We just know. Knowing has no question around it. So faith is that act as if what we believe to be true, we knew were true. As if we knew it, we're gonna act as if we know it. But it's a lot more than hope, isn't it? In the science of mind, we say hope is a subtle illusion because it doesn't have that aspect of knowing. It's better than despair, no question about it. And our faith should give us a generally hopeful attitude, which is closely akin, of course, to a positive attitude. But hope by itself isn't enough, isn't it? Hope is I hope it's going to happen. Well, I guess we'll wait and see. Whereas faith is, I'm going to act as if it's going to happen. I'm going to act as if this were true. Good. Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, I wanted to shout out Alyssa. Alyssa was saying to her that faith is a little hard to deal with right now, and that what she's clinging on to is love. Faith is love.
Beautiful. Alyssa, thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I have to tell you that when I opened the chapter and thought, oh man, we're going to start on the chapter of faith, I thought, this is a particularly difficult time, isn't it? Usually we talk about faith in the context of manifesting, in the context of demonstrating, right? I'm going to speak my word. We just did a whole section on prayer and spiritual mind treatment and healing, and right, I'm going to speak my word for my demonstration. Now I'm going to have faith that it's going to demonstrate. And yet there's something really powerful about faith as a mental attitude in which we walk around in our lives. And I think that So I want to finish I want to finish my first sentence before I go on to my third thought. So my first thought was, wow, we're going to talk about faith when it is really, really challenging right now, right? We have people who are ill. We have loved ones who are in critical care. We have businesses that are struggling. We have individuals that don't have jobs. We have other people who are simply separated from their loved ones. We can't see each other. We can't be with each other. And there's a whole boatload of uncertainty. Are we going to open up the state? Is it okay? Is it too soon? What are we going to do now? What do each of us individually do while whatever the collective is doing? Lots and lots and lots of uncertainty, right? And so I actually thought, this is going to be an interesting conversation, because I think we don't spend as much time as we could talking about faith as a general mental attitude, as opposed to faith as a specific mental attitude about a specific demonstration or a specific manifestation. How do we find that place, or what is that place to stand when we're in the middle of the process, or the middle of a challenge, or the middle of a crisis, as opposed to, as I said, demonstrating or manifesting? So Alyssa, I love that you said that what you cling to is love. And so we might say that we have faith in the presence of love. We have faith that love is present. So what does that mean? Going back to a couple of the other definitions, right? We don't just hope that love is present. We actually have faith that love is present within ourselves and within others. We have the conviction that love is present, and we act as if love were present. We act as if love were the truth of our own being, or the truth of the divine as it's moving through us, and that love is present in the world, even if we can't see it in a particular moment or in a particular experience, right? And I think this is where it begins to kind of get a little challenging, because in this chapter, I want to read what it says here. Faith has been recognized as a power throughout the ages, whether it's faith in God, faith in one's fellow human being, in oneself, or in what one is doing. So these are all various things that we have faith in, right? We can have faith in ourselves, we can have faith in our decisions, we can have faith in the people around us, and we can have faith in the infinite power and presence. And so what happens when our faith in ourselves feels like it's not actually showing up, our life isn't showing up the way we wanted? What happens when we have faith in our fellow human beings and it's not, and they aren't behaving in a loving manner, right? So what are we having faith in? So Ryan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of these comments, and
Good.
then also I have a question here for you.
Great.
So Anita, shout out to Anita.
Hi,
she
Anita.
says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Man, you picked that right out of my brain, Anita. You picked it right out of my brain. That was the next quote, right? Because faith in the something unseen that is not yet substance, but we are hoping for, trusting that is what's showing up. Beautiful. Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
And so another quote that I have here for you is from Sandra Francis. So she says, we have faith in ideas, things, processes, and people every day, unusually without thinking about it. We totally know the sun is there, even though blocked by the clouds.
Yes.
How do we translate our day to the faith to utilize this principle? More intense situation?
Yeah, that is a great question, Sandra. And that is actually a great example. I mean, it's the classic example, right? We have faith that the sun is shining even though the clouds are covering the sun. And so this goes back to Anita's comment, faith in that which is unseen, which is the substance of that which we hope for. Faith in the unseen, which is the substance of what we hope for, what we are paying attention to. We might in the science mind not use a little stronger word than hope, but that which we want to manifest, but it's fine, right? And so our analogy of the sun, can we find a way to have a mental attitude that knows that spirit is present, that life is unfolding, that good is happening, that there is an end result that is actually the highest and best good for all, that divine right action is taking place, regardless of whether we can see it in the moment. It could be pouring rain, it can be hurricaning, it can be cold and snowing, it can be cloudy for days on end. And yet we actually know the sun is shining, right? And so there is that place that says, I act as if I know that the sun is coming out, even if in the moment I'm kind of grousing about how much it's raining, I'm tired of the clouds, I wish they would go away. I might even be feeling depressed because there's a lot of clouds and it's not nice. I might be mad because I couldn't go on my picnic because it's raining. Right? I can get focused on all of those things, or I can focus on, I know the sun is shining, which means that the clouds are going to roll away. I am going to get to go on my picnic. It may just not be today. So what is that? For me, that word is trust. I just have to admit, this is the gospel according to Petra. I'm not wild about the word faith. I think it doesn't have enough knowing in it. I would actually equate faith with knowing. But I don't need evidence of my senses to prove it to me. That, I think, is the difference. Because we can know without the evidence of our senses. That's called intuition. That's what our intuition is. It is a completely legitimate, entirely different way of knowing. We often tend to equate knowing with experience, facts, things that we have seen, have done, and all of that is the evidence of our senses. So it is actually simply knowing that something that we've seen before is going to happen again. Except that things that we've seen before may not be things we want to have happen again. Faith is, to me, is trusting that that which I believe to be true from a universal spiritual perspective is in fact true, whether I see it or not in the moment. Which means that I know my spiritual principles without requiring evidence in the moment. Now, yes, I can build my faith because I have had evidence of knowing the unseen is present, knowing that good works out. I can look back at my life and I can show myself that that has already happened, and I'm sure as heck know that you can too. So in this moment, can we really know? Can we really move to that place where we know that spirit is present, that love is present, that the infinite is in fact working out, that the divine right action is taking place even when we can't see it? That is faith in the unseen, which becomes the substance of that which we see. And that is the part that is particularly difficult, right? And it's where I would equate, so it's like that whole, I think that was really great, Steve, hope, faith, and knowing, right? except when, as I said, when knowing is based on the evidence of our senses. Faith is knowing from our deepest inner experience of divine reality without requiring the evidence of our senses. So one of my favorite, what should we say, representations of this, right? If you remember the Indiana Jones, and I think it's the first movie. No, I think, you know what, it's not. It's the third one with the Holy Grail with Sean Connery in it. And he's getting towards the end of finding the Holy Grail, and he has to walk across an invisible bridge, a bridge he can't see, right? It's called the leap of faith. And he has to trust and believe and know that that bridge is there, even though he can't see it. Of course, he plays a little bit. He pushes out some stones, right, that go out there so he can see the shape of it in that first step. But the rest of it he can't see at all. And yet, he has to step out on it and trust that that bridge is there. Of course, it's a movie, so we know that that's all, you know, CGI and all that stuff. But that is a brilliant outpicturing of what I believe faith is. See, if we wait until we know, because we've seen it, because the facts have lined up and our senses have shown us and we've seen it, that's not faith at all. There's the bridge, walk out on it. We don't need any faith for that. Faith is that willingness to step into the unknown. And there's a great little phrase. I used to have it hanging on my wall for years and years and years, and it says, "Faith is the willingness to step off the cliff and know that either you will find a place to land or you'll be given the wings to fly." Right? So for me, faith. I don't, as I said, it's not my favorite word. I like the word trust. Faith has too many trappings. I have faith in something outside of me. It's going to pick me up and give me wings. It's going to fly me off. It's going to, I don't know, it's a little too, sometimes I think there's a little too much magical thinking in it. But I like the word trust. Trust feels very real and grounded to me. Like I trust that this is there, that this is actually what's happening, that this is what's going to unfold. This is what's taking place. And when I trust, I am willing not just to act as if I believed it were so, but I'm acting because I believe it's so. So I'm acting on it. I'm trusting myself. I'm trusting my inner knowing, my intuition about my decisions, right? I'm trusting that the people around me actually we all have our best interests at heart. And I'm trusting the universal principles and the universal presence, even if things seem a little confusing or uncertain to me. Trust and that willingness to move in that, based on that, right? And that is as Alyssa said, that is a little challenging, isn't it? Because boy, oh boy, if you're reading the news, if you're on Facebook, if you're reading and being inundated with all that stuff, first of all, there's a lot of confusing things going on out there. And it doesn't look like everybody has everybody else's best interest at heart. And if you're like me, I'm like, I don't know what the best answer is. But I know that there is that within us that does. There is divine right action that does know what is the best unfolding, right? And if I trust that and move from that place, that's the ground. That's the ground of being. All right. So on the next page, 156, this is one of my more favorite sections. This is misplaced faith. It's the section called Misplaced Faith on page 156. Someone has said that the entire world is suffering from one big fear, the fear that God will not answer our prayers. And so he goes on to say, well, let us analyze what this fear is. The fear of lack is nothing more than the belief that God does not and will not supply us with whatever we need. The fear of death is the belief that the promise of eternal life may not be true. The fear of loss of health, loss of friends, loss of property, all arise from the belief that God is not all that we claim. So what is fear? Nothing more nor less than the negative use of faith. What is fear? Nothing more nor less than the negative use of faith, faith misplaced. So we have, when we are in fear, when we have those moments of anxiety, when we have that trepidation or that, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Do you see we're having faith that what's going to happen next is not going to be good? We have a belief, there's a belief back here somewhere that says we don't know. And that if we don't know, that immediately implies it's going to be worse instead of good or better than what it is right now. Right? It's just astonishing to me. I've done it in my own life. Clung to something because I assumed that if I didn't have it or if it went away, that by definition meant that whatever I was going to have next was going to be worse. Why not? Wouldn't it be better? Why wouldn't it be greater? Why isn't it possible that the outcome of all of this actually is an awakening to our interconnection, actually is an awakening to how important love is, actually is an awakening to how important all of our essential workers are, who tend to be predominantly women, mostly non-white, and who make a pittance of money. How all of this awakening, why not have faith that awakening is actually happening, regardless of what it appears, right? Maybe what we see in the news or what we're inundated with. Do you see? So this is the opportunity for us to really examine what are we afraid of and what is the fear that is driving that. All right, Ryan, I see your hand. Let's have some comments.
Yeah, I really like this question that came across from Dave Lopez.
Hi, Dave.
He says, I think that faith in ourselves, here, let me get this pulled up here. A lot of people are commenting after your power quotes there, Petra. He says, I think that faith in ourselves is basically
That's okay.
Ourselves is predicated upon the sense of personal sovereignty versus giving up our power to another authority. Do I have enough faith to simply know in my own personal skin without concerning myself with the notion that someone else might or might not know the same thing?
Can you read that last bit again to me?
Do I have enough faith to simply know in my own skin without concerning myself with the notion that someone else might or might not know the same thing?
So that very first portion of that sentence, do I have enough faith to know? That's, to me, the error. We don't need faith to know. This is where I think faith is knowing. Really, are you willing to know that that's the case? That you have enough sovereignty and authority in your own life? And I don't know that it's willing. Sure, I think we're all willing. I think we need practice. I think we have false ideas that get in the way. And we have been taught in one way or the other from wherever that actually we should fear what other people think, what other people are doing, which is nothing more than faith that what they think is more important than what you think. Do you see? Ernest Holmes goes on to say, I don't know that it is in this particular chapter, section, but he does say it somewhere. We all have enough faith. You have enough faith for anything and everything. The question is only, what will you place your faith in or on? Are we placing our faith in the idea that what other people think is more important, what they're doing, what they're believing? Or am I going to place my faith in what I think and what I believe and what I feel in my deepest self? Not just, what I think and believe, right? But what I think and believe in my deepest self. Because this is the idea of misplaced faith. It's really astonishing. People of a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety and a lot of trepidation and really have a lot of that are people who have tremendous faith. You have tremendous faith. There's no lack of faith. The question is, what are we placing our faith in or on? And so, one, the evidence of our senses versus what we believe to be true, the spiritual truth and things that we've already demonstrated to ourselves. Two, outer situations, circumstances, or people, as opposed to our inner knowing. Three, old ideas about how life works, or what it looks like, the way life works, versus our new understanding of spiritual reality. Do you see? I think it is actually a misnomer that we have to build faith. What we have to do is to continually over and over and over again realign our faith, our trust in what we have come to understand about the nature of reality. Do you see? I don't even like the word belief there. Belief means I don't know. But if we are really examining the nature of reality, which we have done for the first portion of this book, if we have been examining the nature of reality, do you see, this is not a hopeful, I hope this is how this works. No, we have examined the nature of reality so we can say we know something about it. Of course, granted, we can't know the infinite, but we can know something about it. And that is what we then decide to trust. We decide to place our faith in that, not because we believe it, but because we understand it. We can understand it intellectually with our rational, logical mind. We can understand it intuitively with our heart and our senses. Those two things can marry together in a deep understanding through our mystical experiences as well as our demonstrations, right? All of that gives us an understanding which is different than the facts or what our senses tell us or what we've been taught over a lifetime. Do you see? We have plenty of faith. What we want to do is ask ourselves, how are we using it? Are we trusting in what we know to be the way the universe works, or are we trusting that things are not working out, or that it's not as good as we would like it to be? Ryan, go ahead. I saw you have a comment.
Well, I have a few of them here.
Good.
But, I'll just give you a couple of them at a time. So Steve was saying trust is faith tested. So that's trust is faith tested.
That is a brilliant definition. Right. I love that.
He says, I trust spirit because I've had faith/trust in the past and good things happen over and over. They talk about walking in faith. I like to walk in knowing.
Yes.
There is no doubt in knowing. There is some doubt remaining in faith and trust.
Actually, according to the science of mind, that's not true. And so now we can play around with semantics, right? But in true faith, there is no doubt. There is no doubt because you are willing to step off the edge of the cliff because you have complete faith equal trust, equal knowing that that bridge is there, right? And so we all use these words a little differently. What's mostly important is not the words so much, but exactly what you're pointing to. So if we want to use the word knowing, fine. If we want to use the word trust, fine. If we want to use the word faith, fine. It is that, I love that tested. It is that tested experience of inner conviction because I have walked the walk in the past and I have seen that I have come through difficult times and good has come of it, right? Beautiful. It's really, I love that. Thank you. Ryan.
So shout out to Leah. She's been dropping some knowledge nuggets on us. She was saying stuff like leap and the net will appear.
Yes.
And then she also mentions, for me, faith is a habit of thought and action. So Petra, let me ask you this. Would faith be considered a verb and not a noun?
Yeah, see, that's a great question. I think it's much more useful to think of faith as a verb than a noun. I think it's way more useful. It is a way of walking around in the world, right? And as Steve said, it's a knowing, it's a trust, it's a willingness to continually leap into the arms of the unknown, but the known of the nature of reality. Well, let me say, leap into the arms of the unseen. Unseen. It's not in our current momentary physical experience. But leaping into that, absolutely knowing, having trust, having the faith that the universe works as we understand it, that there is a divine love, there's a power and a presence that we're utilizing, that we're participating in, that we are it moving in the world. And so I like the idea of to walk in faith. Kathy Ann Lewis calls it living an answered prayer. Like it's the space between doing the spiritual mind treatment that we've just spent weeks going over and the demonstration, right? Sometimes there's a time lag in there. What are we going to do? Are we going to fuss and fume and pout and worry and fret and have fear that our demonstration is not going to work? Well, each time we do that, we're undermining the very thing we've set in motion. And so faith is the walk from this moment to this moment in complete certainty that this moment is inevitable. This moment must happen because we understand the nature of reality, we understand what we're doing, and we are, well, this is where I think we really get into the idea that we are strong enough and resilient enough and present enough to take the challenges and the path as it comes, because we know this unseen demonstration is already seen in consciousness. The outpicturing of the wholeness of the planet, the restoration of health in humanity, the moving forward in a profoundly interconnected way is already established in consciousness. And no matter how many twists and turns we take during this time, right, that is the place that we walk to, and therefore the place we are walking from. And so the consciousness in which we walk, in that middle space, right? I think that's what's meant by a mental attitude. Holding that mental attitude in the midst of the path unfolding. Easy? Oh, not necessarily, right? That's why it's called a faith walk, and that's why we have spiritual practices, and that's why we have classes and service and celebrations and opportunities to be in spiritual community and spiritual books that we read, because we forget and we get seduced by our senses and we get seduced by the experience and and the information that we're taking in, and we feel inundated. And what happens? Our faith moves to, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? Looks like that's going to happen. Looks like that's what's happening. Looks like that's going on. And we're now having that same experience internally, but it is now around a negative outcome, or something that is not in alignment with this outcome that we had set in the first place. Good. Other comments, Ryan?
Yeah, so we have Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Do you want to go ahead and just unmute yourself?
Hi, well, actually, it's not Jeff, it's Karen.
Hi, Karen.
You guys keep doing this to me every week.
I know, we're going to keep you on your toes, but, well, so my comment about faith is, and my, one thing that I have come to realize in my faith walk is that, it's, it's giving up kind of what has gone before and having faith that what you're believing can override or overcome what you've experienced before.
Yes.
And and that for me, it was something big to kind of allow and to move into this place of just imagining more than I had experienced prior to that. And so just being gripped in those, that's what you were talking about, but being gripped in those, that old thinking. And it's that great Troward quote, principle is not bound by precedent. I have just I love that, because that is really, it just opens up everything.
Yes. Yes, and that is so beautiful, and I'm so glad you brought forward that quote, Karen, because that's exactly right? Because we tend to use the evidence of our senses from our past to predict our future, and then that is what causes fear, because we have had things that didn't work out, because we didn't know that we were using a law, and we didn't know how the law was unfolding, or we didn't know, we were just unconscious to the fact that we were part of the milieu that was in consciousness, right? And to be able to say those things are not a predictor of the future for myself, my family, my community, the planet, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why faith is so interesting. It's such an interesting comment, because it does require us to release the evidence of our human consciousness, our human senses, and move to the evidence and the reality of our spiritual understanding, which is a huge leap, right? And so I think you have pointed to the most seminal leap of faith is exactly that. The leap of faith that moves us out of always using our past experience as the predictor of our future. That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. Ryan.
Yeah, so shout out to Catherine. I just wanted to read her quote that she put here in the chat. She says, "For me, it's about staying in the present moment. Faith allows me to stay in the present moment and act from there, knowing that the universe has my back and supporting me." So, Petra, let me ask you, how would you make this analogy in comparison to a butterfly's life?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we use the butterfly so beautifully for the idea of transformation, right? The butterfly, the caterpillar is instinctively urged to go make a cocoon, and it doesn't really. I have played with this. Actually, we just had this conversation. I can't even remember where. In the last couple of weeks, I don't actually think that the caterpillar has an image in its own mind of the butterfly. I don't think it even knows that that's what's happening when it gets urged internally to go build a cocoon around itself, right? And then what happens? What happens in the cocoon? Literally what happens is that the caterpillar's body liquefies. If you think about that, right? All the cells, everything that makes up the caterpillar's body, the little feet and the skin and whatever all else, liquefies. The very last thing they say that happens is its head pops off, which I think is really quite humorous. There's lots of analogies in that, lots of metaphors in that, right? And then they have something, that caterpillars have something called imaginal cells. Imaginal cells. And those imaginal cells, once the body has liquefied, those imaginal cells is what recreates the very goo that's inside the cocoon into a butterfly. And I love that word, imaginal cells, right? It's not based on past experience. It's not based on anything that has ever happened before, which is why I think we spend so much time talking about the quality of our imagination. And something that has never been seen before, that caterpillar had no idea about, begins to emerge. And over time, the whole body is reconstructed. All the goo that caterpillar turned into is reused to build the body of a butterfly. And eventually, when that butterfly has come into fullness, fruition, right? It splits the cocoon and it crawls out. And what an extraordinary thing, right? That's about as wonderful a metaphor for the faith in the unseen, because that caterpillar has not seen, even in its own imagination, the butterfly. But there's something within it that knows, and it trusts that instinct, and it moves in that direction. So that's a great metaphor. Thanks, Ryan.
Well, let me ask you something with that too, Petra. So do you think the butterfly has fear that it's not going to find another flower to eat from? Do you think it has fear just in the general sense like you and I would have fear?
Do I think the butterfly has fear?
Yeah.
Well, the problem with the analogy of the butterfly at that point is that we think of the butterfly as more instinctively governed, right? So its instincts cause it to look for things that smell like food. And I don't think it has fear. I think it has a deep expectation that it's going to fly around and it's going to find food. The problem with you and I, we've had the experience of not finding food when we wanted it in this analogy, right? In this metaphor. I don't know, somebody's going to have to remind me what the difference between an analogy and a metaphor is. I think I know, and a simile, anyway, that was a tangent. So and this goes back to Karen, to your beautiful, beautiful comment, right? We have the memory of having experiences which imply that there might not be another flower, or it might not be as soon as we would like, or there might not be as many flowers as we would like. And we use that past experience to predict our future. The butterfly does not have, here's where I would draw the parallel, is the butterfly is so in the present moment, simply following its own inner instinct, we would call it intuition, and knowing that it will be guided by scent, by smell, by intuition to the next flower, and that the next flower will feed it, and the flower after that, and the flower after that. Whereas we, instead of thinking that all of that is unfolding, what we will do is go, but wait, there was that moment a while back when there wasn't a flower, and it was a long time between flowers, and maybe there weren't enough flowers. So what if that happens again? And then what happens is our what if that happens again turns into, oh my God, that's going to happen again. Do you see? And that is the cause of fear. That is exactly and precisely where fear comes in, because now we have faith that the what if is in fact going to happen. So one of the ways that I think about building faith, if we want to use those terms, right, is to play with, well, what if it all works out? What if I get the loan? What if I can buy the home? What if my business survives this? What if we find a way through? What if something really innovative and creative happens? What if the people that I know that are sick get well? What if our nation arises out of this in an amazing way? What if the people on the planet wake up to how amazing it is not to keep polluting? What if, do you see, we could spin out those what ifs and begin to allow them to turn into not the expectation that what if is in fact what's going to happen. Ernest Holmes would describe that in The Science of Mind as faith, turning the what if from a previous negative experience into a negative predictor of the future is fear. Do you see? It's faith misplaced in turning that negative what if that into an outcome we expect. So why don't we should all become obsessed with the possibility that good will come of it. Let's become obsessed with that instead of the possibility that it'll just keep getting worse. Ryan.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring up another question for you. Connie, can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Okay.
Hi, Connie.
Hi, good morning, Reverend Petra, and everybody, good morning. I'm thinking about the idea of human beings are sentient beings, and we have this self-awareness. The butterflies don't,
right,
like we do. How does that play in to the whole thing?
Well, I mean, you've pointed out exactly the thing. We are cursed with the ability to question our inner knowing. We are cursed with the ability to examine and to inquire into things, and we can use any criteria that we choose to inquire into things. That is called self-awareness. And what we tend to do in inquiring into things is we tend to take the evidence of our past experience, which certainly there are things that is very true about, right? My past experience is if I'm not paying attention and I pull a hot pan out of the oven, I'm going to get burned. Right? So we're not being foolish. We're not checking our intelligence at the door, right? So there are things that 10 or 15 or 20% of things that are very real, right? Our experience is showing us if we congregate too much around people that have the coronavirus, more people are going to get sick, right? And so if we cover our faces, wash our hands, and are a little thoughtful about it, right, these are real experiences. But there's a whole boatload of things that fall into this entirely, that fall beyond that, where we begin to raise ourselves out of purely our instinctive response to past experiences, where we can analyze and examine them not just from the evidence of our senses and our human experience. We have the capability as self-aware beings and having the ability to imagine something that hasn't happened before and to understand the laws and the nature of reality and use them consciously, as opposed to just in the sort of generic out-picturing of life, which is what we see in the butterfly. And so, being self-aware, we assume it's a blessing, but it's also it's also that thing which causes us to be afraid. Ryan. Thanks, Connie. I see your hand.
Yeah, so I just wanted to read this quote, and then we have Rev Karen, who I'm going to bring up next.
Yay.
But this quote comes from Jim Barron. He was writing it here in the Zoom text. He says, "Here is an example of my faith. In this specific time, Out of nowhere, I'm experiencing faith, knowing that there are more good that I can express in this incumbent organically germinating that will come out of the new temporary norms to new norms that will show up. I'm not in denial of what's happening now or that we were in Disneyland, but there will be some very good shifts, turning points, including efforts around the world with more and more respect to the planet's health.
Yes. Beautiful,
right.
Beautiful. And that's precisely it, right? That was a beautiful example, Jim. Thank you so much for writing that. That was really lovely. And that is having an expectation, a knowing that something good is coming out of all of this, as opposed to a expectation or knowing that it's all getting worse and worse and falling more and more apart, which we would call fear. Beautiful. Ryan.
All right, Reverend Karen, will you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hey, Petra.
Hi, Karen. I'm happy to hear you.
I know you are on fire this morning. We all need to hear this. So thank you. My favorite definition of faith comes out of the chapter on mental equivalence and the section of prayer of faith. And what I love is faith. Ernest Holmes tells us that faith is a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, which so completely accepts it, that any contradiction is unthinkable and impossible. And so I love what you're bringing forth for our own individual life, and especially for this collective life, that any idea that that is going on is bringing forward all this good, that this is the moment that humanity wakens to its spiritual magnificence, and that we really truly understand the interconnectedness of life. Anything unlike that dies away.
Yes.
And so
beautiful.
I have to keep in my own mind that anything unlike it is impossible. Impossible.
Yes. Wonderful.
Anything unlike my health is impossible. You know, anything unlike the health of this planet. So you are on fire. I'm going to snip out a lot of these snippets today.
Yay. Thank you.
And that's what I have to contribute.
Lovely. Well, thank you. Karen, thank you so much for bringing that, because I think you've really keyed on the very reason why in the science of mind, faith has no doubt in it. There's no doubt in it, which is the other reason why I'm not crazy about that word, because it does have a lot of baggage with it. And it's blind faith, or it's faith, but it's not really knowing, right? In the science of mind, when we use the term faith, whatever semantics we want to play around with it, when we use the term faith, we mean absolute trust and knowing that, and there is nothing within us that has any doubt that what we have faith in is in fact the truth. Right? And so I'm really with Steve on this idea. Like, I like the word knowing, I like the word trust, because I also have some baggage with the word faith. There's that little edge around it that I'm not really crazy about. But Ernest Holmes was writing, and he was using those religious terms and really wanting us to move into a different understanding of faith. And that is that absolute conviction. He also says somewhere else in the textbook that faith is that place where every part of us acquiesces to the truth. Every part of us, mind, emotions, body, intuition, energetically, subconsciously, consciously, our entire being acquiesces to the truth. What does acquiesce mean? But to give in to the truth, to give up anything unlike the truth, to acquiesce to it at every level of our being. And that's, I think, why it's a walk, right? It's a faith walk, because we have lots of little pockets that are maybe disagreeing or uncertain about that deep truth. So, And for me, the value of having this conversation today is because we are in a faith walk. We have to walk through what is going on in all of our lives, individually and collectively, and to trust, to know that good comes of it, that there is divine right action taking place, that life is unfolding, and Alyssa, as you so beautifully said, that it is all governed and guided by love. Let that be our faith. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning, joining me this morning. I will say the reason you can't see each other anymore is we had to move from meeting to webinar so we wouldn't get Zoom bombed. And so I'm just so grateful that you're here. I love your comments and your chatting. I just really don't like to do this all by myself and just talk to cameras. So thank you for being here. Thank you for participating. I hope it's as valuable to you as it is to me. We will be starting our Sunday celebration here in about 15 minutes, and we will look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, walk in faith and trust, knowing that you are loved beyond your wildest dreams. See you soon.